Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Nate Schoemer, and you're watching my show on dog training, where I sit down with world class trainers, behavior specialists, authors, and educators from the world of dogs. Today's guest is Larry Krohn. He's a retired special agent with the Department of Homeland Security, where he also served as a firearms instructor. But he's best known for his outstanding work in dog training. Larry has become one of the top experts in dealing with aggression and is a leading authority on remote collar training. Larry Krohn, welcome to the show.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate the opportunity. Have a good time.
And so I'd like to start off just by, for those that happen to maybe not know who you are, just a little bit about your background and your experiences with dogs and what got you into dog training.
Those are the lucky people that don't know, right? Look, it's nothing sexy. It's like a lot of us, right? Me and my wife got our first dog. I completely destroyed it and made it just like a mental midget, right? That was our baby. And I started working with my first trainer back then, mid-90s, and I got addicted to the behavior side of things. Like, he had the best trained dog I had ever seen, but I didn't care about the obedience stuff. I wanted to understand the behavior. And that's what kind of got me just diving deeper and deeper and deeper, and I just got obsessed with it, you know? And then later on, once I started learning from some of the sport dog people, that was a whole different world. And I realized right then, combining both the behavior side of things and the sport dog, I don't think some of the brilliance on the sport dog side of things, it's so ignored by too many pet dog trainers. So I've been screaming with my obnoxious loud voice for a long time, pet dog trainers, especially young pet dog trainers, please, please, please go learn from the best of the best in the sport dog world, because it changed my life. It really did. It gave me a whole different outlook on training, you know. I'm glad I did that.
And how long were you doing mostly the behavioral stuff before you discovered the sports side of
It was
dog
about
training?
10 to 12 years into it when I went to my first sport dog seminar, and dude, I was floored. I was blown away. Like, I didn't know dogs like that existed, you know what I mean? Like some of the most intense, driviest dogs I've ever seen. Like, I honestly didn't know that existed, and I was done, you know? And then the very next dog I got of my own, the puppy, I took what I was pretty good at already, just developing a good, well-behaved, all-around dog, and combined it with the things I started taking from the sport dog people, and I just created an amazing dog, like just absolutely amazing by taking the best of both worlds, you know? So I just try to encourage young trainers to kind of look at it the same way. That's it.
And when did you decide to go professional?
I don't know if you could still call me professional.
I would say.
You know, I'm a retired federal agent. I retired in 2021 after 25 years. I literally started the dog stuff like right after I became a federal agent, you know, and it just so happened it worked out well because I started my career on the southwest border down in Arizona. And after a few years, I got transferred to Bowling Green, Kentucky, where I'm at now. And it worked out nicely because I had a much more stable and normal schedule at being at a nice, plush, easygoing office, you know what I mean? It gave, my hours were pretty consistent. So it allowed me that as soon as I got off of work in Kentucky, it was straight to Nashville training dogs. And so literally like 5 days a week during the week, I was training dogs every single day till late into the night and all weekend long. So I was doing both for a really long time, dude. It was exhausting, but I loved it. I loved it because I knew I had to do it. You know what I mean? I just did what I had to do. And it got old after a while when I've mentioned this before, and I've had other dog trainers speak up and be like, dude, I know what you're talking about. When you are actually working with people, working with the dogs, you're okay. But all the traveling and driving from one place to the other, that shit was depressing. You know? My wife and my baby are going to the pool to have a good time on the weekend, and I'm driving all over God's creation to go train a dog or try to get someone to sign up to train a dog, you know what I mean?
And there is some burnout too. When you're doing it for a while and you're working a lot of dogs.
I quit for a year.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I got so down and out by missing so much time with my daughter when she was young, especially on the weekends. And back then I only dealt with like really shitty dogs, like really difficult dogs. Not because that was my goal. I put out a couple videos with bad dogs, and it was like a double-edged sword. It was the best and worst thing I ever did, because then I got just slammed with all kinds of behavior cases like that, you know, and it got exhausting. And especially when you don't know as much, like I know a lot more today than I did then. I didn't do it the easy, like it was difficult, it was stressful, because you didn't have all the answers. Not that we have all the answers today.
There's more available though, for sure.
Much more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I look back on the way I was training back then, it was very different than today. And I literally quit for a whole year. I was miserable. And then I missed it. I missed it a lot. And my wife said, all my clients back then were minimum hour and a half away. And I was doing all the driving, doing stuff in home. And I said, I can't go back to doing that. And my wife said, just have people come to you. And I said, no one's going to drive 2 hours to me for me to train their dog. She goes, what do you have to lose? I said, it's not going to happen. Like, use your head. He goes, you got nothing to lose. So I said, okay, fine. I gave that a shot, and I never left my house again.
And at that time, you already had the YouTube channel, right? Like you were one of the early dog trainers on YouTube.
I believe I did. Yeah, I believe I did.
And what got you to decide that you were going to make a YouTube channel? Was that initially for the clients that you were working with, so they had something to reference based on what you were going over? Or
you know, I remember when I get into something, I get obsessed. You know, so when I was a kid.
Do you have ADHD?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know. I get really obsessed, you know what I mean? So even when I was a little kid, like I was obsessed with snakes, right? I'd be in the library with the encyclopedias and the books nonstop learning about snakes, right? It was just my thing. Well, once I got involved with the dog stuff, it was YouTube nonstop. Like literally nonstop.
Wait, YouTube as far as studying dog trainers on YouTube?
Yeah, just start. That's when.
And this was back when?
This was probably, once I started, maybe 06.
06. Okay, so there probably wasn't that much on
No,
YouTube.
no,
maybe some Michael Ellis stuff you found.
No, even a little earlier. Maybe even a little earlier. There were a few dog trainers. There wasn't a ton of stuff. I'm not very good with time frames, but that was around the time where people started posting stuff online. There was only a few people. There wasn't a lot.
Do you remember any of the ones that were on back then? Learberg might have been doing some stuff then.
Learberg had, I believe, the videos out that you ordered, and we all had those, right?
Yeah.
Like, who didn't have Michael Ellis videos?
Right.
Everybody. They were like the Bible, right?
Yep.
But I don't even remember. I do remember one that really caught my eye. I just don't like the dude, so I won't say his name. But I learned a lot from him. I learned what not to do.
Yeah.
Okay, so he was one of my best educators. I learned exactly who I didn't want to be and how I didn't want to train. But he was one of the first ones putting out tons of content, you know, and you had to watch it. You like, it was popping up everywhere. And then little by little, more people started showing things, and we had stuff at our fingertips. Not like we have today, but for the first time ever, you can get on these computers and start checking things out. It's like, wow, man, you know, this is incredible. You know, I try to find any kind of articles or magazine clippings from some of the big European sport dog people and try to study that stuff, you know, but it was just a little more difficult. Today we have all of that stuff at our fingertips, you know.
Yeah, and sport work is really excellent. I'm glad that you brought that up, and I always tell dog trainers as well, look into some competition obedience, even if you're not going to compete. What is it specifically about the competitive world that you like so much and that you believe makes a dog trainer better?
What I tell the pet dog people, right? Listen, we all see, anyone can say they're a pet dog trainer. Like, let's face it, there's a ton of people out there that should not be charging money for dog training. You know, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. But the one thing that I started realizing, if you could deal with and handle and be successful with these insanely complex driven animals, it makes the pet dog stuff seem like cake, man.
Yes.
It's so easy. What's difficult on the pet dog world of the side is educating the human, right? Like, that maybe the animal is a lot easier, a lot more simple, but on the human end, it's a little difficult, because in the sport dog world, I think I talked about it today a little bit, most people in general, there's always exceptions, most people in the sport dog world, the working dog world in general, they want to teach, and they have some knowledge already, but they're always looking to get better.
Yeah.
Right? In general, there's always exceptions. In the pet dog world, They just want us to stop their problems.
True. Yeah.
The majority.
The majority. Yeah.
When do they call a dog trainer? When there's problems.
Yep.
It's like two different worlds. Even though there's so many similarities, it's two different worlds, and it gets old, right? Like it could be really difficult. So like, you see the dogs we have here today, this weekend, right? There's not a lot to work with.
A lot of sweet dogs, though.
Yeah, no,
Very nice,
absolutely.
yeah.
Like great pet dogs.
Very
right?
sweet. Yeah.
But if you don't have the behavioral cases, the dogs make the seminar.
Right.
And I'm not one of these people that feels like it's a privilege to watch me watch what I know, right? I'm opposite. Like I'm really hard on myself, and I'm like, my wife calls me the insecure dog trainer because I'm always worried about failing and stuff, right? And you know what it's like. You guys traveled here from a long way, you know, and what did I tell you guys? Don't.
Yeah, you're like, it's not going to be worth it.
It's not.
It's
don't
been
have
great.
the dogs, you know, and I didn't want you guys to make the trip because I knew there wasn't going to be much here. So I tried to look at it from the perspective of the dog owner that is here, and maybe to us, it seems like we don't have much to do or it's not exciting, but then I always try to see, well, maybe from them this really is beneficial.
Yes.
So there was a time where if I didn't have the interesting dogs, so everyone can get something out of it, I'd really be upset, I'd stress. I don't, you know, would I rather have that? Of course, but I don't let it get to me too much anymore. I just focus on the person. Let's see what you know. Let's see if we can get the basics down pat, and, you know, I'll help you as much as I can, you know, and if you don't have the bad dogs, let's say, right? That's what most people want to see because they tend to learn a lot. How do we handle this, right? It's nice when you at least have a couple of, like, every now and then I'll get lucky and I'll be, okay, what are we doing? I just want higher level obedience. And they got a dog that has a lot. Like, awesome. We're going to have a good time now, right?
Yeah.
Have fun. But sometimes in the pet dog world, you get none of that. You know, it's rare. We usually have something to work with, but sometimes you get none of that. And then it's not like you're trying to be creative, but you have to make the best of what you have and not let not having the exciting stuff get you down, because then if I kind of get down and I'm moody or disappointed about it, that's not fair to the people who went out of their way to be here. So my first thing, it's funny because I used to get like physically sick before these seminars.
Just
like,
from the anxiety, the
so
stress.
nervous, so upset, you know. And the second I started looking at it a different way, I stopped worrying about fixing everyone's problems. And I started to focus on go in there, have a good time, treat people really well, be happy, be grateful that they're here. You know, keep your attitude up. Then it's really hard to totally fail. Maybe I'll fail a little bit.
Do you still get a little anxious, a little nervous before starting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sometimes worse than others. Today I was kind of anxious because I'm looking around and I'm going, this is going to be rough. You know, these dogs just want to hang out and sleep, basically. You know what I mean? Which is okay too.
Well, it's like we were talking about before, and I really liked what you said about how you were explaining advanced obedience. And you're like, well, let's define advanced obedience. Well, it's really doing the basics and doing the basics very well.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are not that good at the basics.
Yeah.
And if we can focus and fix the basics, it does, in a sense, start to fix everything else. So, like, a big part is the timing. When you're working with them, and it's one of the most common issues that professional dog trainers deal with, is the trainer or owner rather of the dog, their timing on the markers is off, or they're overshadowing the command with the physical cue. And these are all very common things, and it's things that we struggle with as trainers. We're just aware of it.
Yes.
And so we're constantly, so when we accidentally say a marker a couple times, we know we did it. Or if we pair a command with a physical cue, we know we did it. And a big part is pointing it out to them, and then also getting them, and it was something that you said too, and it's something I say to my students, whether it's a dog trainer student or it's a normal pet client, is I basically say the same stuff over and over and over again, but I say it in different ways.
Yeah.
Because you might understand this one analogy, and this person doesn't, and this person gets that analogy. So you're hitting it all these different ways because people learn in different styles.
Yeah.
And you're also really funny. I know we were talking about that before, but I was really entertained the entire time I was watching your presentation. It was a very, very fun seminar, day one.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to day two. And I do wish that there were some of the aggressive dogs, because I'll be honest with myself, every time I've done a seminar, I didn't have any aggressive dogs because I didn't like the way that I deal with aggressive dogs, whether it's fear aggression, aggression with people, resource guarding, I always try to build a relationship before coming in. I'm like, how can you do it in this situation?
100%.
How can you? And so I was really curious and interested to see that.
Yeah.
And then I also like that you do the bite suit.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love for you to take a moment to explain why you use a bite suit when you're working with people aggressive dogs, because I agree with it 100%.
Yeah.
And I just like the way that you explain it. So if you could explain it again, because there's a lot of value there.
Sure.
And I think it's how more trainers need to approach people aggressive dogs.
Yeah.
Instead of some of the other techniques that are being used.
No, and what you said is dead on, right? When you talk about dealing with aggression or any kind of serious problems, I'm the same way. When I'm working with someone in real life, like I'm not trying to stop behaviors, right? I'm looking to try to make the best out of that dog, because then everything gets kind of easy. And that's why, if you remember first thing this morning, I said, this is unrealistic. It's unfair to the human. It's unfair to the dog. A seminar is like not an ideal place to train, right? But you're here, so we're gonna go faster than normal. We're gonna put the dogs in situations they wouldn't normally be in the real world. My job is to give you all the information, and when you leave here, go back to reality and start from step one. In a way that's much more conducive for the dog to learn, more fair to the dog, right? This is unrealistic. The bite suit thing, if I remember correctly, I think I started using the bite suit when it's something I took from Ivan. I've taken a lot of stuff from Ivan, right? I've worked with aggressive dogs for a long time. I've never been a heavy-handed trainer, but there was a time when I used to be too much hands-on. Right? Even though I was having really good success, it was massively stressful to me and the dog, right? And when I say hands-on, I don't mean like correcting the dog and punishing the dog for acting up. I mean, even just stopping the dog from attacking me, right? It gets to be very stressful, right? And when I started taking what Ivan was doing with the bite suits, that becomes the dog's best tool, right? Putting his teeth on someone, because no matter how big and bad you think you are, when a dog, especially a strong dog, puts his teeth in you, it is hard not to respond. Like nearly impossible, right? I'm not a big fan of muzzles. Use them when you have to. Safety is important, but it does alter the whole picture for the dog. And a lot of dogs know they can't achieve what they want to achieve with that muzzle on, so they act differently. With the bite suit, when you allow that dog, when you could be just completely natural in your state of being and not trying to antagonize the dog or ignore the dog, like truly being normal, and that dog decides to nail you and you have no reaction, like nothing, not, oh, that didn't hurt, get away from me, sissy boy, you know? Right. I mean, literally no it didn't happen. You take that best tool away from the dog. And when the dog realizes, shit, that didn't work, now what, you know? But also, what happens a lot of times is what happens when a dog usually does that, here comes the battle, here comes the fight. And they learn to expect that. And then when you don't give them that physical fight, all that conflict, that anger, again, too, that's not expected. So it becomes very, very powerful. You know, then eventually we take, right from the beginning, we put the dog on a much longer line and allowed to make those decisions, right? Don't want someone coming in on a 6-foot leash, a lot of tension on the dog, and then me approaching in a bite suit to see what the dog, no, the dog's going to react poorly. It's going to make the wrong decision. But when we put the dog on a 30-foot line and you walk in the room and you're just hanging out, standing there, and you allow the dog to make that decision, is he going to come check me out? Is he going to sniff? Is he going to bite me? Okay, if he bites me, I'm not going to have a reaction, but let's work with the handler and teach them how to deal with that. But if the dog makes the right decision, right, we're going to celebrate that. So when the dog has the opportunity to decide what it's going to do, man, the learning goes through the roof. It really does. You know, but all that stuff, I've taken a lot of what I do from great sport dog people. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
you know
me
what
too.
I mean? I don't know where I'd be without it. You know, it's just because for a long time, the first 10, 12 years, I trained with a 6-foot leash and a flat collar. No food, no e-collars, no nothing. It was a lot of exploring, a lot of traveling, a lot of, you know, walking and just teaching the dog how to be with me, how to live with me, all that stuff. So when we got good at that stuff and we combined it with the more like unique, different little ways that sport dog people do things. But even the sport dog world, if you look at the dogs from the 80s and 90s, let's say in the IGP World Championship, right? Compared to the dogs today, it's night and day. Doesn't look like the same sport because training has gotten so much better. Science in everything, every aspect of the world is gone through the roof, right? We were talking about sports earlier. We were talking about dunking a basketball. It was a novelty for a kid like me to dunk a basketball at my age, my height. A novelty, it really was. Today, there's kids way smaller than me, like jumping over cars and shit, while they're in high school. Why is that? It's not because the humans evolved, it's because the training's evolved. We're smarter, we're better at everything. Science has gotten, I watched a guy in the combine yesterday, 6'3", 220 pounds, run like a 4.340 with a 43-inch vertical. That's insane. That's like getting hit by a car. You know what I mean? Jeez. And just like with the dog stuff, training has gotten like super advanced, dude. Like we're like living in the Jetsons age, you know what I mean?
Oh, and it's amazing too with the amount of information out there. Are you familiar? I can't recall her last name, but she's really an exceptional trainer. A trainer, Mia.
Oh, Mia Skogster.
Exactly,
one of my favorites.
Right. Yeah.
And
isn't she the only person in history to get a perfect at the world level?
I believe so. I believe so. Maybe even twice. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. I thought maybe even twice she did. But you heard me talk a lot today about sincerity and emotions, you know. If you look at someone like, say, Ivan, whose whole system is based around play, a big part of Mia's system is based around emotions. Like it's, if you watch her train a dog, it's beautiful. Like it's just gorgeous to watch. But trying to teach people, especially pet dog owners and pet dog trainers, how to be sincere in their emotions when you're happy with the dog, when you're unhappy with the dog. It's really difficult. Like you can't teach that. Like that's something that there has to be a feel there. You know what I mean? That comes, you can't teach that. You can guide them and explain things and show them, but they have to find that sincerity on their own. You know what I mean? There was a guy I was working with in the UK. I did a seminar. I did some seminars in the UK in September. And he had a really difficult dog, border collie mix, and whenever there was movement added, this dog would explode and just want to kill everything, right? The problem was it wasn't other dogs moving, it was his own movement. Like if the dog moved forward, it exploded and wanted to kill.
Was it fear?
It was insanity. Didn't seem to be scared of anything.
Okay.
But its own forward movement created this aggression that was violent, you know? So when we started diving deeper into the punishment stuff, like we dove deep into today and talked about and got to do, because this dog was a good candidate to really show what I was talking about. At one point, I was working with another dog, and I literally stopped in the middle of it. And I pointed, and I said, look at him. Look at that guy over there with that dog, the owner. He's not a dog trainer, he's just the owner. I said, that's what I'm talking about. Like he had just punished the dog for having one of its outbursts. And he was on the ground, like just making up and connecting with the dog. And it was like the purest thing you wanted to see. It was so sincere in his actions that by time we left there after the second day, that dog was doing amazing things. Like he'd have the opportunity to go after a dog and we'd have him on the long line and he'd go explore. Like, I'm going back to play with my dad. It was incredible, dude. Like it was incredible. But the reason that happened, it's not, I didn't do that. I gave him the information. But the reason it happened so fast is because the way that guy connected through the sincerity in his emotions, you know, and it's one of the most important things that people overlook. There's still a lot of macho bullshit in dog training on all sides of it, right? If the dog does this, oh no, like I'm going to show you who's boss. Man, that's why the dogs look like they did in the 80s and 90s, right? We've gotten away from that mentality. But unfortunately, there's still a lot of people in the behavioral world that act like that, you know?
Yeah, well, it's, as you said, a big part of it is the clear communication. The more clear we are with the dogs, the happier they are, the faster they learn, and then we are able to progress rather quickly. I do want to take a moment and go back to the bite suit with the people aggression. Not too many people deal with that, but there are trainers that deal with it, and sometimes they don't know what to do. And so having more tools, and it is expensive getting one of those bite suits, but one of the things that I think is so valuable about that is I always try to have the mentality that every single dog that I work with, I want the dog to believe that I am on the same team.
Sure.
We're not enemies and we're not fighting. So if the dog thinks that I'm an enemy from whatever sort of experiences the dog had
Yes.
before, or if maybe it is something that's built into the genetics, if the dog comes and bites me, because I do the same thing in the bite suit. That's
Yeah,
why I love that you were
nice,
talking about it.
nice.
The dog comes and bites me and I don't react to it. And then the dog stops, and now I start communicating with it. It goes, yeah, I just used my greatest weapon, and it had no effect.
No
but
effect.
also, you didn't start fighting me,
Exactly.
right? Like, he just gave me his best, and I'm like,
Exactly.
that's nothing. But I can't respond like that if the bite actually hurts.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So after the dog comes in, they bite. Sometimes it's quick, right? They might do a quick bite and back
Yeah.
off. Very rarely are you going to get one that holds on unless it
Right.
has some sort of training.
Right.
It's going to do something quick. After it does that, what do you do? What's the next step?
That comes from the owner, right? So we make sure that the owner, the handler, knows how to handle that
And the
beforehand.
owner's 30 feet away.
Yeah,
They got the long line, or
somewhere
20
in the
feet,
room, or
something.
it may be up there close with the dog
Okay.
at this point, right? As long as the dog is free to come and go and make choices within reason. You know what I mean? At that point, we're not going to put the dog in that situation until the owner knows how to follow through and handle that, right? I want
Yeah.
you to address that behavior in a way that makes sense to the dog, right? We're not going to let the dog get out of it so easily, but we're not going to beat the crap out of the dog either.
Right.
Because like you said, that's what they're used to, that fight, that battle. And when you take that away from them, that's a big thing. And when we run back to same scenarios, and now the dog makes the right decision, well, we're going to celebrate that. And we're going to celebrate that over there, right? You and Mama are going to go play a good game of tug over there because you made the right choice. But very quickly, we're going to move on to where eventually the dog makes the right choice. Maybe now they toss me the tug, I throw it back to them, they play, right?
Yeah.
Later on, they throw me the tug, I throw it back to them, they play. Where eventually they throw me the tug, I throw it to the dog, they play. You understand? And then very often, like more often than not, by the end of that first session, like still in the bite suit for safety, like you're playing tug with that dog. Right now the dog has a whole different outlook on you, right? And you start with one human at a time. That's it. I used Ranger, the Canine Corso, for about 3.5 years ago as an example today, just because his picture was on the wall in Rob's place. That was a prime example that when I was filming all this stuff and showing how I was handling his human aggression, that's where all the people are saying, the experts, let me tell you why you shouldn't play with this dog. Or let me tell you why you shouldn't allow this dog to bite things. Or then, it was a sincere question. People say, how does this translate to the real world? I don't argue with them. I just say, well, we'll have to wait and see. You know, it starts with me, but then you do have to venture out and they have to experience that with new people, strange people. So to this day, his owner will send videos 3.5 years later, going on 4 years later, that dog's off leash in public and will play with complete strangers. That's how powerful tapping into that part of the brain of the dog when you're adding productive play, not just going through the motions.
And would you say that's almost a form with the whole bite suit situation, using the tug? That, in a sense, is counter conditioning.
Well,
in a sense, right? Because the person's a negative stimulus.
see, where people go wrong with that, let's say you have a dog that's dog aggressive, right? And counter conditioning's fine. I have no problem with it. There's a place for everything, right? But I think too many people spend too much time there, put too much effort into it, right? And so there's definitely and it's beneficial. It's not, and I do it, I use it, right? But if I had to choose between the two, preparing the dog before I put him in that situation, and when I know that I can not just control the situation, but I have an impact on the dog, right? And now if maybe we go out for the first time out in public where the dog's gonna see dogs or people, whatever they have trouble with, if a dog comes to me and they're super dog aggressive, well, we're not putting the dog in that situation for 2 or 3 weeks. I'm not going on a walk. I'm not going to the park. It's me and that dog in my fenced-in backyard on a young line. I'm gonna build everything I need to have with that dog. So the first time I take that dog out and it sees a dog, I'm going to allow the dog to make the decision. And almost always one of two things happens. Either the behavior's not there at all, because he doesn't have a reason for it anymore. He has a different look on life, you know, or it's very mild and when you say, hey dude, don't do that. I don't like it. He goes, oh, I get it, because we taught that in my backyard. That's where people get confused with the play. Now, if I went out there and every time he saw a dog, marked it with a yes and food, 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 or play, 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 and using more of a counter conditioning thing, I think you got to get away from that as soon as possible. It's okay to be part of it. I never do one thing, right? To teach a behavior or to fix a behavior, I never do one thing. As far as I'm concerned, the more pictures you can show a dog, the better. But I think the power really comes into play, and I talked about this today, when I think the dog's ready to go out. Now I'm going to put the dog on a flexi. I know where in my neighborhood someone has an underground fence. I know their two dogs are going to run out to the limit and go crazy, and I'm going to go walking past that house. And I don't have the dog walking next to me. He's free to be a dog. And when we encounter that area and those dogs come running out, I'm going to let him make the decision. If he makes the wrong decision, I'm going to stop and we're going to have that conversation. Dude, wrong answer. You can't do that, right? I'm going to deal with that issue right on the spot. But if he makes the right answer, the right choice, now I let him know, dude, I know what you did there. That was effing amazing, right? And now we mark that with our award, and the tug comes out of nowhere and we play. That's a big moment for a dog. You see the light just go off. Holy shit, like they're excited. You know, it wasn't expected, but they catch on very quickly where that comes from. You know what I mean?
And how many times have you shown up at a client's house, in-person lesson, very first time you're meeting them, very first time you're meeting the dog, and they're having issues with the dog being reactive on leash, whether it's reacting because of dog, person, skateboard, doesn't matter, leash reactivity, very common problem, and you show up and they're already standing outside with the dog, and you get out and they're like, we're ready to go on the walk. How many times have you seen that?
Yeah, all the time. We all see it, right? That's just normal. Like,
and then you say, no, we're going inside the house, and we're going to have to communicate with the dog. Right? I can't take the dog out day one when it's reacting.
No, listen, I've done board and trains for dogs, like one dog in particular I'm thinking of. I've done board and trains to where I have the dog for a whole month, and it's a lot of dog, and it does amazing. Like, it's doing really well. But it's a lot of dog for the owners it's going to. Way too much dog, right? And then one of the big issues is, like, the first time I went in the house, the walls are torn up, the door is torn up because the dog's a lunatic in the house. And then we get there, and let's say one of the issues is, okay, if I take the dog to my sister's apartment, we can't go in the elevator because it loses its mind when the door opens, sees people, right? So now after the board and train, I go back for the first follow-up after I return the dog, and they're ready to go to the sister's house. I'm like, we're not leaving this room. Like, we're not leaving the living room. Like, there's been times where I do 3 sessions without leaving the living room because that's what the people needed, not the dogs. The people needed that. That was the most difficult part for them. The doorbell rings. Okay, the dog loses its mind. We got to fix that, right? The dog is not going to do that for me, but it's going right back to its pattern of doing what it's used to do with you because you're doing the same thing. So I'll stay there 3 different sessions if I have to. Once they understand how to deal with that, that's their biggest issue. Now we can go deal with the stuff that's going to fall right into play.
Right, and as the owners start to develop real confidence, and that's the only reason why I jumped in the seminar was because of that show on Netflix that I brought up, and when she was working with her dog, it was pretty clear that she was nervous. And rightfully so. I mean, I get nervous when I work in front of people, especially ones that I know what they're doing. Right? If I bring it out and you're watching me. I think I was telling you earlier, Tom Rose, every time he watched me, I would mess up because I was so nervous. And the dog can sense it. And for me, it's always having to understand the science behind why I'm doing stuff. I need to know the why. If you can't explain the why, then what's my real motivation to do it? And so having that explanation is so important, and that's another reason why I enjoy listening to how you talk about training. And so when I saw that on Netflix, the show explained, and how they collected the sweat and the way that they did it. You haven't seen this episode?
No.
It's really interesting. It's worth watching. So they had these people watch different movies, different shows. So one makes most people feel happy, and so they collected the sweat, and then they showed horror movies, things that would scare them, things that would make them angry, like hateful content and stuff, intentionally to get them at that emotional state. And they put it in a little container, the sweat, and they set it on the ground. They brought the dog in, and that person's not in the room. And when the dog would smell it, if it was the person that was experiencing fear, the ears went back, the tail went tucked, the dog went back.
It's crazy, right?
And so, like, I tell people, I'm like, you can't fake confidence to a dog. Like, if
no.
you're afraid, it doesn't matter how you try to make yourself look, the dog's gonna smell right through it.
Yeah.
And then that's going to impact it. And so with dog trainers, it's like you've worked with so many dogs, your frame of reference is so big, and when you're taking a dog out and you're working with a dog that's leash reactive, they're almost never reactive
Right.
on the leash
Exactly.
with you because they know they can smell the confidence, like literally.
Yeah.
And even if you go out and you're looking for the dog to react and you're like, all right, here's a dog, let's go after that dog.
Yeah.
And then you walk and the dog does nothing. Because the dog's like, oh, I'm with you, and
Yes.
you got this under control.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
Yeah, your whole chemistry changes, and you can't hide it from the dog, you know, and people don't think about those things. That's why I was glad it came up today and we talked about that, because everyone just looks at this like, oh, let's teach my dog how to stay on a place board. No, dude, we're gonna get a little deeper. And the funny thing is, Nate, I didn't always care about the why. I didn't care. Like,
really?
I wasn't.
You cared about the results.
Yes, you know, but of course, once I smartened up and realized when you truly understand the why, like, you get better at everything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I say this all the time, like, I think this goes for most trainers at, you know, like 5 years into dog training, like, you really think you're hot shit. You know, like, it's like your ego's big, dude. And I see it still with young people.
Yeah.
At 10 years into it, you're certain you know everything there is to know. And then at 20 years into it, you realize you don't know shit. You know what I mean? It's like there's so much more. And I tell people, like, if I know 10% of what there is in dog training, that's a lot. I'll strive to get to 100%. I'll never even come close to that, you know?
Yep.
If I get to 20, 25%, I might be lucky.
That's
know?
Well, that's the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
You're familiar with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Austin and myself were talking about that earlier, and it's something it's so relevant in so many different situations because you start to learn about something and you think you know everything. And, you know, I hate to use such a common analogy, but it's like just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
And then as you start to learn more, you start to see how big the subject really is.
Yeah.
And I'm at that point now, what you were just saying, I start having what's it called? There's a term for it, imposter syndrome.
Oh, yeah.
I feel that sometimes. Like, am I an imposter? Am I not actually good at this? You know, and then I talk to other trainers who are really, really great trainers. One of my friends, Maureen Cuccinella, I had her on my channel. She is so good. Like, she's the type of person who's been training since she was in elementary school. I don't know if she goes that far back, but she's been training for a long time. And before she even came to the Tom Rose School, because that's where I met her, her dog was already doing all kinds of tricks. It would clean its paws. It would do all kinds of amazing stuff. And she was so young when she was doing that. And then she just continued to grow. She did Ivan's course. She's done some stuff with Bart. And I went out and I did some filming with the trick series with her, and then I was talking to her, I was like, man, you should start a school, because like, she is so good at teaching, and she's very charismatic. And she was like, I don't think I'm good enough for that.
Yeah.
And I was like, you got imposter syndrome too, huh?
Yeah.
And she's like,
you know, when I talk about that to young trainers like that, I feel that way, they're blown away. But it makes them feel really good because everyone thinks it's only them.
Yeah.
You know, they
it's very
don't
true.
realize that we all go through that. You're always going to doubt yourself unless you're just an egomaniac. And if you truly care about getting better, I assume everyone feels like that to a certain
And care
extent.
about the dogs.
Yeah. And you know what the other thing is that I don't hear many people talk, I don't know if I've ever heard anyone talk about it. When someone starts in this industry, quite often the first person who has influence over them becomes a god. Like, they think that is the best trainer on the planet. You can't convince them. I went through that. I really did. Like, the person I said I, didn't like enough to mention, there was a time where I thought he was like the best dog trainer on the planet. I was convinced. Because you don't know, you don't have anything to compare it to.
No frame of reference.
You know what I mean? It's like, and then when you start venturing out, and the one thing that Bart always encouraged me to do when I started working, because I kept going back to only work with him. He said, why do you keep coming back? You know this. I said, no, I learned something every time, like literally every time. But he always encouraged, go learn from everyone. You know what I mean? But I spent so much time just trying to focus on what I was taking from him. I was in no rush. And today I see young trainers bouncing from seminar to seminar to seminar to seminar, and they never get close to mastering or perfecting anything they took from anyone, but those people that latch onto that first person, that becomes a god to them. So even if they're learning in a bad way or giving bad advice, you can't convince them otherwise until they start seeing, other people, and they go, oh, wait a second, I didn't know this existed, right? And because the only thing you have to do to truly influence someone, you just have to know a little more than they do.
True, yeah.
And if you know a little more than they do, they're like, wow, like, this guy's the best. There's no one better. Like, I hear trainers say, oh, he's one of the best in the world. And I'm thinking, we talking about the same person? Like, no, he's not even close. Not even close. But I also know you haven't worked with anyone at that level. So it's an easy thing for someone to say that. And I don't label like anyone that anymore. Because the more great people I saw, it's like, we were talking about guitar earlier, right? Who's the best guitar player of all time? I don't think you could pick one. It's more like, I think when you get to a certain level, when you have Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan or Eddie Van Halen, I think it's just, who do you prefer? Whose style? Like, how could you pick who's the, I don't think it's possible once you get to that level, you know what I mean? And so in dog training, you have people that are so phenomenal, like a lot of people, and a lot of people that most people have never heard of. They're not on social media, you know? And you have so many people that are so good. I don't think there's ever one person that you could say is the greatest dog trainer of all time, because no one is an expert in all areas of dog training, right? Even if you took, like, let's say you took IGP. Who's the greatest IGP trainer or Schutzen trainer of all time? I don't know if you could pick one. Helmut Reiser's name will come up because he's had such an influence on so many people.
Ivan,
right?
Mia.
Ivan's name's going to come up. Mia's name's going to come up. Newt Fuchs is going to come up, right?
Peter something, I can't recall his last name.
You know, Peter Shirk's going to come up, right? But there's amazing people all over the world. This person might be better in tracking, but this one's better in obedience. This one's better in protection. Or this one's better in the first half of the obedience, you know, and this one's better at the back half of it. There is no one person that's the best at anything.
It's hard to measure.
Yeah, it is. You can't. So it becomes more of a preference. So when I decided to do the IGP thing with Dante, like, I'm a nerd with that stuff. So I am fortunate to where I have access where I can call some great people and ask for advice, right?
Well, you pay it forward too, by the way.
Well, I try. I try. But the other thing is, I don't belong to a club. I wasn't training with the club, and I didn't want a trained dog. Dante was my plan to learn the sport together, me and him. So I wasn't trying to hit a certain level, you know what I mean? I wanted to learn together. You know, I was going to make a bunch of mistakes that he's better than I am. Like, if he was with the right handler for the sport, I think he could do exceptionally well. You know, he's a really driven dog, but his temperament's phenomenal. He's got a great nose on him. So I'm the thing that holds him back. But that my whole plan was to learn with him, do the best I could with him, and then with my next dog, maybe strive to get a little higher, a little better, you know what I mean, and learn from all my mistakes.
Oh, yeah, you get better with each dog.
Of course, of course. Because now I have puppy fever. My wife's shooting me down. I don't think she loves me. I think she's cheating on me, and I think she thinks I'm gay, and she doesn't want anything to do with me. And if she really loved me, she'd let me get the damn puppy.
Get the puppy.
Okay? I hope she watches this. But I already know the things I do different than what I do with Dante. With Dante, I intentionally went super slow, like crazy conservative and slow. For one, I was always scared about his body. I knew there was something off. Like, I knew from day one, I knew there was something off for a very long time at least. And so I didn't start jumps with him until he was 3 years old. You know, most people don't wait that long, but I was truly that concerned about his body, and I was in no rush. If I were to get a new puppy and start over, if my wife really loves me and I get a new puppy to start over, I know the things I do different already. You know what I mean? I just would start more from day one.
And what's good too about the more dogs you work with, the greater your frame of reference. And that's something that's a real struggle for new trainers. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. When I was first learning, I had zero frame of reference. My first dog that I was actually teaching advanced obedience to was a Dutch Shepherd. And I missed the part in class about not saying the command at the same time you do the physical cue, not saying the marker at the same time. You're right. So I was pairing everything. I was pairing the commands. I was pairing the markers. I was pairing. The dog just wasn't learning. And it wasn't that I wasn't putting in the time, which is something else that I thought about when you were talking about trainers going to a bunch of different seminars, but they're not improving. That also depends on, okay, are they just going to the seminar and then they're not working? Or is it the person who's insanely obsessed? They go to the one seminar and they do nothing but that all day, every day, and all their free time, just constant. Then they go to the next seminar and now they can start plugging that into the system that they're starting to develop from that one, and now they have places to slide it in because they've been working like a maniac. They've been bitten by the bug, right? But when you're on that first dog, and what happened with me is my dog wasn't progressing. I was putting the time. I was training from the moment class started, and I wouldn't leave until around 10 p.m. Every single day. And the biggest critique or criticism that I had from the instructors was I was overtraining my dogs. And my buddy who got me into dog training, Jeff Hankinson, fantastic dog trainer.
I know Jeff.
You know Jeff Hankinson?
I know Jeff.
No, yeah, so
Jeff's a good dude.
Him and I went to high school together.
Oh, no kidding.
And he got
I haven't seen Jeff in a long time.
He's great.
That's funny.
Yeah, and so he got me into dog training. He came out to visit a mutual friend of ours, and I was like, what are you up to these days? He goes, oh, I'm training dogs. I'm like, no. And he says, yeah, I got a facility, I have a rescue, I have a pit bull rescue, and I have 4 people on the staff. And I was like, that is insane, that is incredible. And I said, I've always been into dogs. And he's like, why don't you come out and check out the facility?
It's doggy style, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. And so I went out to his facility. I spent 3 weeks there, and I was working with him, and he showed me all this different stuff. And so he got me into it. He was like, we're not getting any younger. If you like this stuff,
cool,
you should be a dog trainer. Yeah. And he told me about Michael Ellis, and he told me about Tom Rose. And it was tough to decide between the two, but Tom Rose accepted the GI Bill.
Yeah.
And that, like, all right, done deal there.
Nice.
And then as I was leaving, as a gift, he gave me a couple Michael Ellis DVDs. And so I started studying. That's when I first got introduced to Michael Ellis.
Yeah.
And so every time I had a chance, I would go visit him. And I brought my little Dutch Shepherd, and I go there, and I'm trying to show him what I know. Like, look what I've been doing the past 2 months. And he's like, you're pairing everything. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, you're pairing everything. I'm like, please explain what this pairing is. And he broke it down, and then suddenly my dog started to do all the things, because now I was giving the dog an opportunity to know what it had to do instead of all the pairing. And it fixed it just like that. Had I had a frame of reference, I might have known that from the beginning.
Right.
But I had no frame of reference. I didn't know if the dog wasn't doing it because it was a dog that didn't understand training. Or if it was a dog that wasn't doing it because I sucked. Which it came to find out at the time I sucked.
That's funny.
Right? But that's something that's difficult for new trainers, but having to put in that time and continue to work. And I do want to go back to play, because thinking about the science, and Austin and myself, we were talking about this. So those of you that are watching, Austin, the man 0 to hero, is filming right now. And if you do have some questions, I know you said you had some questions for Larry, just let me know and jump in.
Dude. He looks like he's about to pass out.
Well, he drove 15 hours yesterday, and we only got about 4 hours of sleep last night. So I started doing some research on the play, and I don't remember what book I was reading, but they were talking about, and they used the analogy with cats. It's like when a cat is playing with a ball of yarn or whatever, it's not just playing. It's training to catch the mouse.
Yeah.
So play for mammals is, in a sense, it's the natural way that we learn. Right? So if we take the way in which a dog is supposed to learn, not dominating the dog, but playing and directing it towards the obedience, that's how they're supposed to learn. And I really love the fact that you talk so much about play. And you use corrections, and I use corrections, and that's part of that balance. Right? But the play is really such a huge foundation, and of course it also is a big part of the relationship building. Did you have a certain point in your career where you maybe had a switch that was turned, or that aha moment where you realized play was as important, or was it always important for you?
Again, back to the first seminar, when I saw what Bart was doing, I started incorporating a lot of that stuff more with like bite work and using bite pillows and that stuff, but a lot of some of the games I was trying to show today, where we just take the obedience with the dog knows and make it a little more challenging. Using a bite tug over there, and we're sending the dog over it before. Those little things I took from him. And then when I got my first dog after I started, that was Luca, my oldest Malinois. The thing I did most with him, he had a little wubby. You know, they call them wubbies, but he had a miniature one. And
Wait, what's a wubby?
It's a dog toy. I think Kong makes them, and it kind
okay.
of has like 3 tails, and it's got a big ball and a little ball on top.
Oh yes, okay, I know.
But they had little
yeah.
tiny puppy ones, and I would just throw that thing nonstop from him. So I made my first video with him. He was 9 weeks old, and he's doing some cool stuff, you know. But I would just throw, he'd retrieve, bring it back, and we'd go nonstop.
Oh wait, you don't wait till 9 months before you start training?
No, I made my
You
first
started.
video at 9 weeks then, you know, and we were playing a lot of tug then, doing a lot of bite stuff, but.
And why start so early? Because I mean, I'm joking when I say wait until 9, but there's a lot of people that think they're supposed to wait till 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Why start so early?
Oh man, they're sponges. They're just sponges, and they live through their belly, you know? So between playing and feeding, like, you could do so much. I tell people all the time, that dog was doing more at 7 months old than Dante was doing at 3.5 years old. Because I was super conservative with Dante because he matured super slow, you know, and I just didn't feel he was ready for that. So I'm always going to give, at least to the best of my ability, if I think like I need to do things slower with him, and I might have went too slow, I don't know.
And you said the other was a Malinois, right?
Yeah.
And then Dante's a German Shepherd.
Yeah,
Which
very
they do
different.
tend to mature a little bit more slowly.
Yeah, Luca just wanted to do things, you know what I mean? And he was just like, I couldn't get him away from me if I wanted to, you know? So like when I started the e-collar work with him, he was 9 or 10 months old when I started it. And I couldn't use a recall to start introducing the e-collar because he didn't go away from me. I had to teach it by sending him away from me first and then to me. Like he's that, to this day at 12 years old, he don't care about no one. Not another person, not another dog. It's me and him. That's my dude. Like the most amazing dog ever. You know what I mean? But then everyone had the Michael Ellis playing tug video, right? That was also where I started getting deeper into it. And then Ivan stuff took it to the next level. Like seeing how much he relied on play and his view of it was really the game changer for me, looking really deeper into it. And I tell people, like everyone should own possession games and chase and catch, but I think possession games should be a must for every single dog trainer, every single dog owner.
How important would you say play is in training, whether it's basic pet obedience or competition?
It's irreplaceable. It's non-negotiable.
What's some of the most difficult things you have teaching new people how to play?
You saw it today.
Yes.
Okay. Eliminating the masturbation tug is very difficult. Not getting aroused watching someone play tug can be difficult at times.
Yeah.
Because again, to me, the hardest thing to do in all of dog training is breaking human habits. So it's great that more people are seeing how important play is, but they still don't get the full concept, right? And they go through the motions, right? Shaking the dog up and down, shaking the dog side to side, then the dog gets the tug and he goes away and they're like, oh, he gets bored. No, it's just not enjoy. It doesn't make sense for him, right? So I tell them, watch 2 dogs play, right? What are they trying to do there? They're trying to get the toy, win the toy, right? Like they're trying to achieve something. There's a goal there. But sometimes you'll watch 2 dogs and they're stagnant. One's pulling this way, one's pulling, and there's no movement. And then this one starts pulling real hard and gets a little ground on this one. And then this one's pulling back and it's back, but there's not running all over the place.
And then one lays down and uses the body weight.
One tries to get a better bite and the other one snatches it and takes it off and takes off and now the chase is on, right? That's a game. So if you watch puppies and dogs play, like you'll learn a lot more by trying to mimic what they actually do. But it's hard for people to understand, well, okay, play. When I ask them, what are you trying to accomplish? Well, I want to wear my dog out. I want to make him tired. I want to have fun and I want to build a bond. 3 most common answers, right? And they're all legit. And you will achieve that. It is a byproduct of the play, but they don't understand the deeper purposes. For me anyway, I think your whole communication system could be built into that play. You see from today the lack of markers and language that people have with their dogs, right? You see it, right? But then also you get to set those rules and boundaries and you get to enforce them, right? And it's not so much about the play itself, why it's so important, but that stuff you're teaching, setting those rules and boundaries, are what is going to make you successful when you're trying to deal with the reactivity, the aggression. And people have a hard time understanding that. You understand? Like, if I ask someone, I do a couple of online consultations 5 days a week. A lot of behavioral problems, and you'd be amazed what you could accomplish through virtual stuff, which I fought for at first because I said it can't be done. But when I was finally talked into doing it, one guy was like, look, I said, I can't help you without, he was overseas. I was like, I can't help you without seeing you, putting my hands on you and your dog, right? He goes, look, I've spent over $30,000 in board and trainings. I got no help. The dog's worse than it was before. He goes, I have nothing to lose, so please charge me for one session. I said, fine. And I said, okay, if we're gonna do that, I need 2 videos from you. One, you doing basic obedience, whatever your dog knows on leash, where sometimes you're rewarding the dog, sometimes you're not, you're mixing it up. And I need a video of you playing tug with your dog, again on leash. It could be a long line, I don't care if he's dragging it, but have a line there, a few minutes long. And so when he sent those videos, I go, dude, you're doing everything wrong. Like, nothing's right. And he got all bummed out. And I go, no, don't be sad, that's a good thing, right? Because if you were doing everything right and you have these issues, little harder where to start. But I said, I can guarantee you, I said, our one phone call, I'm gonna get you further than your 30 grand. I said, I swear, if not, I'll give you your money back, and I'm dead serious. And the reason I said that was no one taught him shit. Like, he knew nothing. So every trainer that he went to did a board and train and focused on the dog, right? Made things more confusing for the dog with so many trainers, and never focused on the handler at all. He knew nothing. So once he started making more sense to the dog, man, he did amazing. Not a dog trainer either, just a regular average dog owner. And to this day, I ask for those 2 videos because it's so beneficial. Just like what I'm asking people to do when they come out today, same stuff. Because you see their holes, what can we make better, right? And if you're doing everything right and we have problems, people will send videos and they won't follow the instructions. The dog's off leash, they're doing this, doing that. And I'll get on them sometimes, like, that's not what I asked for. Well, my dog won't run away. No, you're missing the point. The leash isn't to stop your dog from, I don't care what your dog knows or doesn't know. I'm not watching the dog, I'm watching you. I want to see, how do you get the dog to do what you want it to do? What do you do when it does what you want it to do? What do you do when it doesn't do what you want it to do? That's what I'm watching. I don't care what your dog knows. I don't care if it knows nothing, right? How do you get it to do something? That's what I'm watching. They go, oh, I didn't even want to send this because it looks so bad, you know? Like, no, you're missing the point.
That's can I add to that?
Yeah.
Because that's a really great point that you make. And it's something that I tell my dog trainer students that I work with, and I say the same thing. I'm not concerned about how well your dog is performing. I'm concerned about how well you are performing with your dog. And there's a saying that a lot of dog trainers have where you can take a poorly trained dog and put that dog in the hands of a skilled handler, and that handler will make and you did it a few times today, and that handler will make the dog look good. And you could take a really well-trained dog and put that dog in the hands of a poorly trained handler, and that dog will look terrible.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't matter what the dog is doing. Don't focus on, like, my dog doesn't do a perfect sit, my dog doesn't do a perfect down. I want to see how you are reacting to it.
Sure.
You said that beautifully. Like, how are you acting if the dog doesn't do it? How are you responding if the dog does do it? And these are all really important questions, because when we as trainers, and everybody who trains their dogs, I consider a trainer. They may not be a professional, but if you're at home and you have your dog and you're teaching it to sit, you're a dog trainer.
You're a dog trainer if you're not teaching your dog to do anything. Right? You're training. Are you training for good or are you training for bad?
That's a
very good point. Because your dog's in training whether you like it or not. Right? But it's up to you, are you training for good or for bad? Because you're training something, I promise you. That's why when I send a client home and they say, okay, what's my homework, right? I'm like, okay, I need you to give me 5 minutes of obedience twice a day. And they look at me like in shock. That's it? Well, yeah, 5 minutes twice. If you give me 5 minutes twice a day, your dog's gonna get better constantly. I say, hey, you wanna do 10 minutes twice, do it. But I'm just asking for 5. But there's a catch. You have to give me 24/7 inside the home. That means we've identified the bad habits that got you to me, right? We have to replace them with good habits. It's no extra work. You're just doing something different. It's no extra work. right? Then we have to set rules and boundaries within the home that you have to consistently stick to, okay? And then we'll bring the best out of the dog through formal obedience and play. If you do those things, you're going to be good. You're going to continuously get better. You know what I mean? So people think, when I used to put out a lot of videos with Luca, they'd say, how many hours a day do you train that dog? I was like, hours a day? I don't train this dog hours a week. Like if I get 10, 15 minutes every couple of days, that's a lot. Same thing with Dante. And I was training for competition with him. I didn't train him much. I made the times I did train him, I tried to make it productive, and he didn't know we were training. We were just having a good time as far as he's concerned. Everything was based off of play. Like, you know, I asked a question today, right? If my dog is in a down, we're practicing the long down, let's say I'm 100 feet away, and he moves or breaks the down, how can I correct that behavior? Well, e-collar. No, I'm not using e-collars in training. I'm not using anything in training. Like, I don't teach any of that stuff with e-collars, you understand? So you have to get a good feel for the dog and understand how to, that's the easy answer. That's what everyone assumes. You know, even, again, with some of my previous dogs, if they were doing really cool things, and I always trained as if they were sport dogs, right? Ever since that first BART seminar, every dog, just like a client's dog, I don't care if it's a Schipperke or whatever, Schipperke, whatever they call them, right? Like, I don't care if it's a Bichon. Like, to the best of my ability, I'm going to train every dog as if it's a working dog, a sport dog.
Well, you're developing habits too.
Absolutely.
So develop the habits that are going to get the precision. Why not?
Absolutely. You know, and when I started doing that, man, things really changed drastically. You know, I've been ripped apart many times online, sometimes well-deserved, and I ask for it. I'm opinionated and loud. But I remember I had a case a few years ago. The dog with a serious bite history, medium-sized dog, 30-pound dog, some kind of terrier. I think his name was Benji, if I remember correctly. And he had a serious bite history. And he's a massive resource guarder, toys, food, anything, you know. And the first week, like this is probably going back 8, 9 years ago, week 1, we focused on play, you know, heavy. And I also taught him, we were talking about teaching the force fetch, train, retrieve tonight. I taught him that also. That dog never once tried to guard anything with me, never tried to bite me, never guarded the toys, nothing. Like, it was everything to him. It changed his whole perception on the objects that he was once guarding. You know what I mean? I had to correct that dog one time when he was with me, and it was mild. I had people over my house working on something in the garage, and we walked into the garage and he saw strangers and he growled, and it was literally like, hey, don't do that shit, you understand? Like, that was the extent of how many times I had to correct that dog the whole time he was with me. He never once did those things. Now, I don't give him back to the owner and say he's fixed, right? Now I have to transfer that and teach them how to provide what I provided, okay? So if I'm dealing with someone, like I deal with a lot of people that may be a little older and don't have the physical capabilities to bring out the best in the dog they have, I can't train that dog like I would for someone who's 30 years old and fit and active and loves to play tug with, you know, an 80-pound Rottweiler. I can't do the same thing. Well, maybe we could use a spring pole or a tether tug or something and also use that for advanced obedience, if you will, right? And give that dog that outlet of playing tug on the pole instead of directly from someone who's 75 years old who can't do it.
Right.
Because the dog needs it. It's non-negotiable. The dog needs it. Because if you can't provide that to the dog, you're going to have issues. You're going to have problems, you know what I mean? And I deal with a lot of those people. Someone decides they want a Rottweiler. They want a working line German Shepherd, right? They want a Doberman.
They don't know what they're getting into.
No, they don't. They don't. They like them. They're beautiful. They look good. But then they expect them to be couch potatoes.
Yeah, no.
And it rarely works out that way. So how can we make this dog want to be a couch potato when it's in the house? People, same thing with Luca, my oldest Malinois. People would watch him in videos and say, how do you live with that dog? Like, he doesn't act like that in the house. He comes in and he goes and lays down. He's lazy. He's content with sleeping all day when he's in the house. You know, he barely moves.
But you satisfy the needs that he has as a Malinois.
And also, I set those boundaries from day one as puppies. We don't do that stuff in the house. In the house, it's the same rules for my kids. We're not going to play and go crazy in the house. When we're going to do that, we do that outside.
That's a really good point too.
Yeah, and what's one of the biggest people go wrong with when they get puppies? They get the wrong dog for the wrong lifestyle, and then they give way too much freedom before the dog is capable of handling it. And they spend more time correcting and yelling and getting mad at the dog for doing dumb shit, when any dog at that age is going to do that stuff. So I'm a little obsessive at first when I get a puppy. I don't give it the opportunity to make those mistakes.
Yep.
It's
Same
with
here.
me, it's on a long line, or when I can't keep my eyes on it, it's in the crate.
Yep.
You know, and as it gets older, when I can start to say, hey, don't do that, then I can give it a little bit more freedom, right? Otherwise, the dog's going to do things that come natural to it. It's not going to make us happy, you know? And now we're fixing problems instead of creating the dog we want. So I go heavy first year and a half, 2 years on really developing the dog I want. So at 2 years old, they become self-sufficient. And I could leave my Malinois in the house and leave for the day. I could leave them together.
Yep.
And I don't come home to garbage cans turned over and couches chewed. I've never come home to any of that, right? But I'm not doing that when they're 8 months old, 9 months old.
Yeah. Finish what you're saying.
That first trainer I ever worked with, I asked him, why are your dogs so well behaved? And the first piece of advice he gave me, he goes, look, my dogs sleep in their crate till they're 1 year old, no matter how well trained they are. He goes, you bypass a lot of problems doing that. And they're not left loose in the house when we're not home till they're 2 years old. And what I say earlier, like that first person that you learn from becomes God. So to me, that's all I had to do, right? So I never broke that rule, you know, like I've always stuck to that to this day. Like dogs sleep in their crate till they're a year old, right? How much of that is all because of that? I don't know. But I could tell you I don't deal with a lot of those same problems that people do. And I have super high drive dogs.
Right.
Like really high drive dogs.
Yeah, you might be able to do that with a very mellow Newfoundland or something early on they can stay. But yeah, if you have a working line German Shepherd, there's no way. And right, so if you ignore your dog when it's in the backyard and it starts digging holes, and it's like, digging holes, that's a good time. Yeah, can we stop it? Sure, but it's way harder than if you were to have prevented the dog from ever doing it in the first place.
Sure.
And I'm very similar with the crate, but I get high drive dogs as well.
Yeah.
And only recently with my German Shepherd, he's a little over a year, and I've actually been allowing him to stay on he has a twin size bed. He has his own twin size bed.
Yeah.
And so he sleeps on there, but I have a baby cam on him.
Yeah.
And so I watch him, and then I'll fall asleep and I wake up. He's still there, right? But I'm still very cautious because I don't want to wake up and now all of a sudden he's ripping something up.
Yeah, no. I did an experiment a few years back, and I've talked about it a few times because I just truly believed that this was the case. I took in several board and trains over several months, and I did no training. I didn't charge the people. I told them what I was going to do. I didn't charge them for it. And with every single day, they were all aggression cases, either human or dog aggression. I did zero training, nothing. The only thing I did was take the dog for a walk once or twice a day. They just lived with me and did normal stuff. And every single one of those dogs gave up the bad behaviors, right? And I figured that would happen. And what I tell people, the only thing I did was I took the dog out of the crack house and got it clean.
Yeah.
He was out of the crack house, and I cleaned it up. Right? So if I give that dog back and send it back to the crack house, he's going right back to doing what he was doing. So I have to change the people inside the home. Because for me, as far as I'm concerned, the behavior is created in the home, good and bad, right? That's where you spend most of your time, you understand? And so I'm like insane when it comes to that stuff. Like I've eased up as I've gotten older, but you could ease up and give more freedom when you understand them better.
Yes, absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like, you think about it, I've heard Jay mention this before, me and Jay have talked about it. We talked about free shaping today, right? I'm not big at free shaping, but I do a shitload of free shaping with things I don't want. You understand? Like dog goes.
How do you do?
Dog goes near the dishwasher when it's open. There's dirty dishes in there. No, get away from there. You know what I mean? Oh, okay. He goes near the garden. Get away from there. Always guiding the dog when they're young to show. There's only two places in my house the dogs aren't allowed. That's the kids' bedroom because they're carpeted. I don't want hair all over the
Do you allow them in the
carpet.
kitchen?
Yeah, they're all over.
I don't
Yeah.
allow them in the kitchen.
Yeah, I have a kind of an open house, open floor
Mm-hmm.
plan, so yeah, they're allowed in the kitchen, right? But like with the kids' bedrooms, like it's amazing. The first time we go there, they go in there, hey, get going, right, and send them out. It's amazing how quick they learn exactly where the boundary is, and then
Because of the doorway, the
they'll
threshold.
literally lay there with their paws right at the threshold
Right.
of the door. And if it's a little in, I might even go, hey, and they'll move back a little bit. I could honestly say I've never had to enforce that like ever again once I show them I don't want them in there. They don't do it. Like they just don't go in my it's not a thing to them. You know what I mean?
Right. They kind of go on autopilot.
Yeah,
the initial training.
they really do. But if I started letting them go in there and, you know, one day they have an accident or they chew something up and then I decide I don't want you in here anymore, it's going to be a lot harder.
Absolutely.
And if you leave that door open and you're not home, that dog is going in there. You
Yep.
understand? Unless you set some kind of booby trap that makes them the devil just came and got them because you're not around.
Yeah, it scares them. Like I
Yeah.
heard someone told me that they put keep their dog off the couch, they put mouse traps.
Yeah, I've heard
and then put a
people do
blanket
that
over so the
too.
dog jumps on the
Yeah.
blanket and it kind of snaps.
Yeah.
I do want to go back, if you don't mind, to the play videos that you
Yeah.
have. The play, because
Yeah.
that is so important. So when you have them send the videos of them
Yeah.
playing, what are some of the most common things that you see? And I think it's important for someone who is learning. I always say, I love the saying, champions study game footage.
Yeah.
And I tell everyone who's learning how to train, I'm like, you have to film yourself.
100%.
It takes extra time to set up the camera
Yeah.
and to review the footage, but you're going to get better
Yeah.
faster. So when you have these, and I think it's brilliant that you do that. That's something I might start doing.
Yeah.
When you have them send the videos of them playing, what are some of the most common things you see with the play?
I literally just made a video about this the other day, maybe a week ago, about like 3 of the most common mistakes. There's plenty of them, but 3 of the most common ones, right? First one, and I didn't come up with this saying, I wish I did. I don't know who first said it, but the average person, they go to get the dog to play. What do? They take the toy and they ram it in the dog's face. Right?
The suicide rabbit.
That's it, the suicide rabbit, like destroying all desire to do anything, right? Then we got the masturbation tug, boom, 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 right? Trying to make the dog super happy, right? Trying to get. The other big thing too that drives me crazy, when we talk about setting rules and boundaries in the game, people try to avoid mistakes so much, right? So one of the most common things, everybody does this. They're playing tug. They ask the dog to out or release the tug. The dog does, and now they're standing there. And before they give the dog permission to bite the tug, the dog goes and grabs it without permission. Almost everyone
And then
universally says something like, and then pulls the tug and hides it up high or puts it behind his back, when that's a perfect opportunity to let the dog know, no, you just broke the rules, right? When I ask someone, how did you teach a reward marker? Usually it's yes. Even if they don't do it exactly right, they have some kind of a concept that they must make it powerful. Even if they're doing it wrong, at least they make an effort, you know? When I say, what's your no marker? Well, it's no. How did you teach it? You get silence. Well, I just say it when I don't like something, and you think your dog understands that, right? Like, that's a big part of the game.
They don't have dictionaries, the
right?
dogs.
So the dog goes to grab that tug. I want the dog to make that mistake. So I can very casually say no without getting angry, right? Give the dog a little flick on the nose, a little pop on the leash, something. Attach something to that no, so the dog starts to understand, oh, okay, you didn't like that. The dog backs up, hey, nice job, right? You always acknowledging what the dog's doing, whether it's good or bad. So most people will acknowledge what they don't like, but when the dog is making an effort and trying hard, they don't acknowledge that, right? And those are just 3 of the things. Or another big one, this drives me crazy. My dog really doesn't want to play too much. He gets bored. It's okay, let me see what you got. They start playing, the dog's into it, they're 10 seconds into it, sit, like, whoa, what are you doing? Or out, like, what are you doing? What? Like, why are you asking for obedience or outing the dog? You just said your dog doesn't get into it. He's given you the effort and you're cutting him off at the balls. Just play, keep going. Don't do any obedience. Don't ask for an out for at least 4 or 5 minutes, right? Which feels like a lifetime. Especially with a strong dog,
yeah.
you know. But those are just some of the most common things because the human isn't looking at it from the dog's perspective. You know, they're so ingrained with throwing obedience in there or asking the dog for an out really quick. And a lot of times I'll see them out sit, yes. And then they're bringing the dog a piece of food. I'm like, what are you doing? Why are you bringing food into this?
Especially if the dog rather have the toy.
Yes, stick what you want the dog to, what the dog does love, or what you're trying to get him to love. Let's enhance that. You know what I mean? So, but what they realize is once they start getting it right, then they're like, holy crap, I can't believe the difference. And you saw a couple times today, and the dog wouldn't get into the play, and sometimes I would take over or I'd have them do it. I didn't try to go harder. I'd sit on the ground and be subtle, right? Hide the toy a little bit, push the dog away, play coy with it, and all of a sudden the dog's more energized. We're doing less, but the dog is giving us a lot more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're playing at the dog's level.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What I like to say, it's something common in martial arts, right? If you're an instructor and you're sparring with one of your students, you should be sparring at their level, slightly above or slightly below.
Sure.
And instinctively, a lot of people start, like we saw today, too high, too much, too
Yes.
fast. In that
Yes.
situation, they weren't bringing it to the dog's level.
Yeah.
And then that's what you were doing. And then
Yeah.
suddenly we're seeing the dog perform.
Yes, it's cool, right? So
It's
even
really
with
cool, yeah.
dogs that aren't full of fire today, we got to see some go, whoa, this is pretty cool. Like,
Right.
I'm liking this. Let's do this. You know what I mean? And sometimes it had to start just with the little hand-to-hand combat and personal play, right? Just smacking the dog around, tapping him in the ass and biting on him. He's like, oh, man, I want to do that, right? And then that leads to where, okay, now I will bite the toy.
Yeah.
You understand? So people have a hard time seeing it from the dog's point of view, right? And they just see it as it's something to make my dog tired, and I'm going to jump right into obedience because that's what comes natural to the person, right? That constant play, that competitive game where you're actually trying to beat the dog doesn't come natural. Like, people don't think of it that way, you know what I mean? But once they do, they see the difference quickly. Doesn't take long.
Right. And when you see those mistakes, you're watching it and you get the person on, what are some of the first things you tell them with the play? Like, all right, I want you to try this, or I want you to try that.
Oh man, there's so many different things, right? The first thing is, you saw it a lot today. The dog will check out on the human.
Oh, all the time, yeah.
And the person's just standing there at their beck and call. I'm here when you want me. I'm here when you want me, right? So no, you have two things. End it right there. F you, right? You're checking out on me. We're done. We're ending the game. Or take off. Go. I don't know if I can say bad words. Sorry.
We'll beep it.
Just take off. Go. What's that dog going to do? Almost guaranteed it's going to chase you and try to get that toy. You understand? I've had people where I tell them to do that. Like, that dog checks out, take off. Make it a little difficult for the dog to get. I've literally had people turn around and just run away screaming, waving the toy up here. And I'm like, stop. What are you doing? You know? And if I'm filming it, I'll show them. And universally, every single person like, oh my God, I look ridiculous.
I hope
I'm
they
like,
laugh too.
I'm like, absolutely, yeah. You have to make fun of each other. Like,
Right.
that's why today we had a good time.
It was
because
fun, yeah.
You can't take it serious. People are stressed out. And listen, we're not curing cancer. Like, we're training dogs. This should be a good time.
It should be fun.
And if we can't laugh at each other, you know, it has to be entertaining. Just like the dog is going to learn more if it's having a good time, but so is the human.
Yeah, and we've all done
know?
silly stuff too.
Yeah, and listen, this year in particular, I've let myself down. There's been times at seminars where I was not proud of my behavior, how I handled people. Like, I was way too hard on people at times, and I think it was just, I don't know. I wish I had a reason, but my boiling point was really low. I'd get frustrated easy, and when we start being unfair to the dog, I get really upset. You know, when people are struggling with something, not because they're struggling, because we're being crazy unfair to the dog.
Yeah.
And there's been times I'd go watch footage back from the seminar, and I've called people and I said,
Apologize.
I owe you an apology because I was a real asshole. And almost always people are like, no, I understand. I said, no, there's a way, you know, and yeah, I should be hard on you because we want to do what's right by the animal, but I could have handled that a lot better, and I'm so sorry, you know what I mean? And almost always people are like, no, we're good, things are going great. But sometimes I've definitely hurt a couple relationships, etc. But it's funny. We won't even go there really, but the ones I see that I've had issues with, when it comes down to politics, even though I don't we don't bring up politics in dog training, right? But a person that maybe I pissed off or they didn't like the mood I was in that day will see we have polar opposite political views, and you wouldn't believe some of the vile messages I get from people.
Oh yeah, politics.
Dude, it's brutal. It's like they use that, the political side of things, just to attack me. You know what? I just had one the other day. You were a fucking asshole when I met you, and I wish I would have told you at the time. You know what I mean? And it was only because something they said or something I said that was in the political arena that was polar opposite of them, and they just imploded. It just let me have it. And
I hate the team mentality.
oh my God, I just blocked them. Because normally I have a standard response that I give to people like that. My wife begged me not to anymore. It was pretty vulgar.
Just block it. Yeah.
So now I just try to block them, you know what I mean? It would always have something to do with their mom. Let's just say that, okay? I'm trying to be more mature now.
Well, and then go off what you said too about the seminar, when people are coming down and you watch the footage. I mean, we were talking about that earlier, where I was watching footage of myself and how I criticized the camera person.
Yeah.
And the way, like in the moment, I didn't feel like it was bad.
Yes.
And then when I saw it, I was like, oh,
Awful,
man.
right?
Yeah,
Makes you feel bad.
I felt really bad
Yeah, I've been
about it.
there.
And everyone who's there for the seminar, they're trying to be better.
Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
want, like, when we make mistakes as dog trainers, we're not doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, we really care about the dog, which I think most dog trainers do. We want the best for them, but we all do silly stuff.
Sure.
Just to, I'm gonna hang out some of my own dirty laundry, something stupid that I did once, and it's kind of a funny story. I was testing for narcotics, so it was a 5,000 square foot building search, and I'm going around with my dog, and once the dog gets to the odor, they're supposed to indicate, and then you say mark, and then the evaluator lets you know if it's correct, and then you throw the reward. So I'm walking with my dog indicates, and I go, bam, I throw the toy and I go, mark! And the instructor was like, oh, Nate. So it's like we all do dumb stuff.
Hell yeah.
Especially in the moment.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you for taking the time, especially
thanks for talking to me. This is great.
You know,
we can do this all night.
Oh, hell yeah. I could totally do it all night.
He can't. He's in trouble.
He's tired, yeah. But well, I mean, we're going to do some more training tomorrow, and I'm
Yeah.
totally looking forward to it. So in the description, I want to put your email and all your stuff or whatever it is that you want to search. Again, I said it earlier, most of the people that watch my stuff, they already know who you are.
Yeah,
I
vice
mean,
versa.
Yeah, your name has come up in comments during live Q&As. I'll start talking about a subject and they'll, did you see Larry's video?
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah, so
right?
it happens quite a bit. But the ones that don't, we're going to put all that information on the description so they can find you. I think people need to learn from more good dog trainers, and you're one of the good ones.
I don't push much stuff, you know, like I'm not a good businessman. We're both on Sit, Stay, Learn.
Yeah.
Right?
Sit,
like,
Stay, Learn's great.
Yeah, like you got great.
You're crushing it.
video
You got
on
me
there.
beat, though. Your two are at the top.
I couldn't even tell you.
I look every day.
Do
I'm
you
like,
really?
I'm like, he's still beating me.
I didn't know you could check that.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Well, because you just organize it in best-selling.
Oh, wow.
And your two are the two best-selling ones.
Oh, see, I don't want to know that because now if I'm like dropping to the bottom, I'll be devastated.
I even look at reviews. I'm like, he's got another review than I do.
Oh my God, that's so funny. You know?
I'm competitive, but
it's a
you're at
great.
the
What
top.
Nick's doing there is fantastic.
Nick's great too.
Yeah, he's just a smart guy, you know, and he's got a lot of great people on there.
There's some good courses. Your courses are really nice. Mia's course is on there that we were talking about earlier. Omar has a course on there for those that are watching. Omar
Omar's sick,
he's
man.
amazing.
He's ridiculous.
And he's done a lot of stuff in Hollywood,
Yeah.
which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Yeah.
But he's the guy who does the stuff where the dog climbs up on a toilet and goes to the bathroom
Yeah, he's
in the toilet.
ridiculous,
They
dude.
flush, they paint on the wall. Like his level of understanding how to get a dog to do some of the most wild, bizarre things is next level.
It's different.
Right, and so there's some really good courses on there. So I am glad that you brought that up.
Yeah, and I don't, you know, my website, packmasters.com, I don't keep, my wife's just getting that stuff organized. My wife left corporate America a year ago to help me, which has been fantastic. She still won't let me get a puppy.
She's got to let you get a puppy.
Our
She's
marriage
gotta
is
let you do
suffering
it.
because of it. I don't know if it'll ever be the same, but she's made my life easier because I'm awful with the admin and like business. I hate it. I don't want nothing to do with it.
You want to train dogs
That's it.
and train people.
And so she's taken that away from me, which has been nice. I don't even have a business Facebook page. It's just my personal page. So you're going to see dog stuff, you're going to see food stuff, you're going to see inappropriate stuff. Like I don't separate nothing. I'm an open book. I try the Instagram thing. I'm not so good at it. I don't get it. I love TikTok, but I don't post much there. Like every now and then, I'm entertained by. I love it. I love a lot of the comedy and funny stuff on there. You know what I mean? But I'm not good at like doing short social media
short
things.
stuff.
I'm too long-winded for that. And if I'm doing something, I'm usually trying to teach someone something, a younger person, or
And it's hard to teach something in a minute or even 3 minutes.
it's not for me.
Now.
Even Instagram, I'm not a big fan. I'll post stuff on there, and I have a decent amount of followers on there, but it's not for me. You know what I mean?
Well, your YouTube is great, and one of the things
you.
I like about your YouTube and how you film is you set the tripod up.
Yeah.
You put the camera, and you train dogs.
Yeah.
Like you actually train dogs, and you do it often, and that's something that more YouTubers need to do is actually train dogs.
Well, you know, the whole
on the
battle
video.
with the force-free balance community trying to take our tools and our e-collars, and people say, they come up with all these plans, what can we do? It's easy, show more work.
Show more work.
Like,
Absolutely.
it's the one thing, it's the reason why I've never been attacked much from the purely positive crowd. I don't give them reason to. I'm showing what I do.
And the dogs look happy.
You might not like it the way I train, which is okay. You may think I suck as a trainer, it's okay. But you'll never see a dog crushed in my hands. And I'm showing every single part of what I'm doing. And that's why they don't target me, you know what I mean? And so if you want to fight that side of things and protect our tools, especially when it comes to the e-collar stuff, show the work. Show more work. It's the easiest, simplest way to shut that argument down. That's it, you know?
Absolutely. More people talk than train.
That's
More
it.
need to train like you.
For real.
Thanks again, brother.
Thanks, brother. This was awesome.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. And remember, leadership isn't dominance, it's communication. We'll see you next time.